Welcome to the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is your host, Tyler Janke. Cycling news, commentary, analysis from Northern California. Today, coming up, we have USA Cycling announces the national championship locations and dates for 2019. Valverde warns never to speak ill of the dead. VeloNews poses some dumb questions to Sagan. Geraint Thomas gets his Tour de France trophy swiped. Quickstep gets a financial savior. And top riders without a job for 2019, we'll list at least the top 7. Things that make you go, and whatever else comes into my mind as we take care of this program. All right, so once again, thank you for joining us. Getting out of the winter time or the summertime, we're kind of into the winter. We're going to be doing some different topics, kind of some things of interest, some weird news and notes. Of course, cover the World Tour and obviously the local scene. Speaking of which, local scene, a lot of Masters races out there, especially in Northern California. We have a lot of World Championship champions. We just saw, I think, Larry Nolan, Jeremy Cattell, Kevin Metcalf in track nationals, all getting World Championships. I think Nolan got one, but I do know the other two did. So congratulations to them. And maybe we'll try to, we talked to Larry Nolan before back at Chico, and we'll try to see if we can get a hold of any of these other guys coming up in the year and talk to them a little bit. Obviously, Jeremy Cattell of Die Endurance. We race against him. Great guy, good, strong rider, well-deserved. So congratulations all around. So speaking of which, though, we have Nats coming up, Masters, National Champ, actually the National Championships for all the divisions. USA Cycling just announced them. I'm going to go through and read a few of those before we get to some of the more exciting topics on tap, which I kind of referenced at the beginning. Any of you do BMX? All right, so if you don't do BMX, or if you do BMX, we've got BMX Nationals. They announced those March 29 to 31. Those are going to be in South Carolina, April 4 to 5 of the collegiate ones in DeSoto, Texas. So if you got BMX on your calendar, Yutch, I know you used to do BMX, so maybe you'll get back into that. The collegiate might be out of your range, but some of those other ones. Road, May 10 to 12. Collegiate Road Nats will be in Augusta, Georgia. I know that's where Masters Nats were this last year. So that'll be probably the same course, I would imagine there. June 2023, Amateur Roads in Maryland, Hagerstown. June 27 to 30, USA Cycling Pro Road Nats are going to be in Knoxville, Tennessee. July 2 to 7, USA Cycling Junior and Elite Track Championships in Carson. That's where they just had Masters Nats. July 2 to 7, I think that's the one I just read off. Okay, July 23 to 28, USA Cycling Mountain Bike Nationals. So those under the road, but it's not road, in Winter Park. I've actually done, one of the few times I did mountain bike racing back in the 90s. I did a Winter Park mountain bike race. Basically start at the bottom, end up like a 3-tier, going up, down, until you hit the very top, and then it's all downhill coming back. And I think I was like 5th. I was pretty proud of that. Other than I led the top, going over the top, I was in the lead, and I do not have the descending skills of these other guys. And eventually put it into a tree. So got that. Anyway, good memories of Winter Park. Also good snow skiing we've done up there. August 8 through 11, USA Cycling Masters. So this is where the road in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Personally, I'm kind of excited about this. I think I'm going to get on a weight loss diet. I've ordered a new bike up as well, so we'll do all kinds of stuff in preparation for Colorado Springs. Be interesting to see where they have that there. I know Garden of the Gods is a typical venue that we've had previously for the road race, so it will be fairly interesting. Obviously, it's elevation there. You might have to prepare for that. There's also, I want to call it, I think it's the Black Forest. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but it was more east of town, and it was some hilly range. It wasn't in town, but it was outside of Colorado Springs. So they have a lot of good cycling you can do there. And anyway, some good prospects there. End of August, or first part of August 8 to 11. August 27 to 21, we have Track Nats, which just, like I said, just happened. Carson. September 12 to 15, Collegiate Track Nats in Rock Hill, South Carolina. October 18, Durango is holding the Collegiate Mountain Bike Nationals. In December 10 to 15, Cyclocross Championships, which will be in Tacoma, Washington. I'm not sure where it is for 2018 this year. Maybe I'll have to get on that. They just did have starting up Cyclocross. Sacramento had some races. Didn't really look into the results, but we'll do that and try to get out to some race, some cross events as well. They just had rodeo. They have rodeo Nats. It's like in the Folsom Rodeo grounds every Wednesday night. Try to get out there actually for some of that as well. All right, so let's go to some of the World Tour interests, notes of interest. And we'll get to where Quickstep just came about, kind of saving their. I think they got a sponsor on board. They've kind of started to save their season somewhat for next year, but I think some of the riders, there was a possibility of losing Gaviria and Enric Mas. We'll get to that, but here's some other riders that I just was looking at today. Saw an article on top 7 riders without a contract for 2019. Wout van Aert, Verandik, Wellens, Creelin. He backed out. They had a merger, and Chris and I had talked about that previously. That was kind of one of his topics of interest. 3-time Belgian cross world champion. He is currently without a title or contract for the next year. I'm sure he's going to get one. For me, it's just even with the diminished market that you've kind of had, for him, it's all about really who you're going to be with, and maybe he's got some legal issues with trying to back out of the previous contract. Huge talent. Maybe he's fed up with the Roto World and he just wants to go into cross and just do that. These guys, the solo riders, do quite well. Him as a world champion. So we'll see where he's at. Connor Dunn, previously with Aqua Blue, easy for me to say. Former Irish road national champ, signed a 2-year extension with Aqua Blue. Obviously no contract now for 2019, but according to the team manager, I talked about that previously, he said he was going to honor the contracts that were in existence. I know Larry Warbass is signed with, I want to see FDJ, and there was another one that was under contract. He's signed with someone else as well. But Connor Dunn he's super tall as well. Anyway, he hasn't had anything, but I think he will be okay. Ben Swift and be okay financially. He'll be able to have something. But, these guys are still young. They want to be riding and being on a team. I was glad to see Larry Warbass actually stepping back up this next year to a World Tour team, being at the continental level with Aqua Blue and their hopes, but that's obviously been dashed. Ben Swift, the UAE Team Emirates sprinters, had some close races. San Remo, I want to say, a few years ago. Milan ran San Remo. This last year, he also had a pretty nasty wreck in Flanders, hurt his back, and I think that really diminished his chances. There's rumor he might be signing up with Sky again, who he'd been with, but he's out without a contract. Mark Renshaw, Bernal Eisel, both with Dimension Data. They're getting up there in age. They've been with Cavendish for around 10 years. They're kind of his leadouts, kind of. They totally are. Cavendish is now just signed with Dimension Data, so there's that prospect of them coming back on board, I would imagine, as well. It'll be interesting to see if they actually can get that connection at their age. And with Cavendish's kind of diminishing sprinting this last year, if they actually think that that's something that this team would want. Because if Cavendish was still winning races like crazy, then you're going to bring his guys on, even if they're kind of getting on the waning years of their cycling. Bernie Eisel's 37. Anyway, we'll see about him. Darwin Atapuma, UAE Team Emirates, 30 years old. He was set up to help Aru and Martin in the Giro and the Tour. Aru really was a bust this year, also in the Vuelta for him, but Atapuma didn't do that. In the Tour, I didn't see Atapuma much at all. He's kind of been one of those breakaway guys. He's almost won stages. He's won stages of other races. Joe Dombrowski has mentioned that he's one of the worst guys to be with in the break. I'm not sure why, but I think they had a little issue before. He kept attacking Joe when he shouldn't have been. Anyway, he's without a contract. He had been with BMC for multiple years. He signed a deal with UAE, and they just haven't given him anything. Tony Martin with Katusha. Now, it's previously been reported that he was going to Lotto Jumbo. I didn't see anything official from the team and or him, so I'm not sure what's going on with that, but obviously the gentleman that has previously been quite the stalwart former world champion on the time trial. He's kind of been losing it. He still gets, top 7s or so, but not quite the rider that he used to be. So those are some decent ones. And then you've got some other ones that I didn't mention in here that Peter Stetina, I still haven't heard anything from him, American that actually made the world's team, but can't close down a contract. For him, a lot of these guys, they don't want to go to a Conti level team. They want to stay at the World Tour. And if they're not going to do that, it's probably not worth it for them. So we'll keep an eye on all of those guys, and good luck to them. All right. Geraint Thomas won the Tour de France, and Pinarello then goes on this tour showing their bikes and paraphernalia. And one of the items was the Team Sky's, the Grand Tour trophies. They had loaned them out to Pinarello. Just read a little, police investigation has been launched after Geraint Thomas Tour de France trophy was stolen from the cycle show in Birmingham. Team Sky has loaned their Grand Tour trophies to Pinarello to display at the NEC in Birmingham last month. But during the cleanup, someone swiped the trophy. So they have security, but they don't do it during the whole presentation, I guess. The team was then said the award was momentarily left unattended. Yikes. And was stolen. Police are investigating the crime. Unrelated, Chris Froome has been tweeting that he has some extra Tour de France trophies to unload. I don't know if that's got anything to maybe, was he at the NEC? Anyway, that's never fear though, because Lance Armstrong is on it. He had tweeted out saying to Geraint Thomas, hey, I've got 7 I can loan you. So, if you think that Lance isn't one of those guys that has turned it around and he's really heartfelt and feels the empathy, I mean, this I think proves it all. So until the one would be found, he would just loan it. Why don't you just say you're going to give him? You have 7. You don't need 7. I don't even know what you're doing with them. All right. I had mentioned that I'm going to go on some sort of a weight loss program. Basically, it's what I think about doing all year long, kind of a prepubescent or a high school teenage girls eating problems that I should get into so I can start losing weight for cycling. Sagan, too, is saying he's too fat. Peter Sagan came out previously last week and said he was too fat to win worlds. Now, just recalling this from memory, I'm trying to think of, I don't remember if he had stated, I think he had just basically stated that he was either too fat for the course or maybe he wasn't in good enough shape. And I think it might have been both. You look at how he did at the Vuelta, and also Greg Van Avermaet, who's a similar type of rider, wasn't able to be there at the crux of it when it came down to it at the Worlds, and then how Peter Sagan had kind of raced at Vuelta leading up to it. He probably wasn't as fit as he should have been or could have been. He'd had a bad wreck too in the Vuelta. Not to mention the fact that that's just a really tough course, so maybe that's what he meant about that. However, this all set up, I saw in VeloNews, they then posted an article with the headline, Sagan, no interest in chasing Tour de France GC win. And the article stated, this is from Sagan in there, who knows what's going to happen to me, Sagan told The Telegraph when asked if he would lose weight to challenge the top riders like Sky's Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas at the Tour de France. If I lose weight, am I still going to be strong? I might not be the man I am. Maybe I will lose what nature made me. My feeling is, why change something that is working? Right? I mean, he didn't change his physique when he won the Tour of California several years ago, when that ended up on Mount Baldy, which was quite the nasty climb, and he held in there. He didn't change his physique Treno Adriatico, I want to say around 2014. It's a great stage. It was one that helped me predict that he would be actually able to win the Tour of California and hold on the Mount Baldy stage, because he hung on with Chris Horner and Nibali in this really nasty climbing stage, and he was able to do that. I remember a journalist like this also reaching out and wondering about when Davis Finney was his son, Taylor Finney, was turning pro, and could he be the next guy? Could he turn himself into a GC contender? And I wonder we all want these guys because they're shown as juniors, maybe. This Evan Pohl, right? I don't know how he is, but he's able to destroy everybody as a junior. We'll see how that relates over into it as being a pro and a full adult. But, Taylor Finney is not going to turn himself into a GC rider. Although did see a transformation of some famous ones here. Lance Armstrong, you might have heard of him. Laurent Jalabert. Laurent Jalabert goes from winning the green jersey as one of the better sprinters to I think he won the polka dot jersey. And I know he was doing it in a way of, sniping some races, getting in breaks, but he was climbing. We know why those guys, it's hard to say. No, it's not hard to say. It's not hard to say that Laurent Jalabert was not a climber and somehow he turned into one. So maybe you have these journalists that think that riders can legitimately transform themselves into that. I don't doubt that Sagan could do something about himself if he really focused. I don't think he would ever be that kind of rider. Just out there. So I just kind of want to say, I think it's insane, the state of our cycling media, perhaps, to even pose those questions. And as soon as I saw that with VeloNews, it just made me shake my head and roll my eyes. Is that a clickbait? Maybe that's clickbait. All right. Well, speaking of crazy stuff and things that make me go, I'm going to talk about that here. Newly crowned world champion Alejandro Valverde. He stated in CyclingNews.com. I just saw this morning. It said, Spaniard. The headline was, Spaniard says people who talk about his doping past are clueless. Yeah. So newly world champ, and maybe you don't know much about his doping past because he seems to be embraced by throngs in Spain. And, we saw this with Contador too. When he retired, he had lost a Tour de France title, and he is still just lauded as the greatest thing since sliced bread over there. Paella, maybe since warm paella. I don't know what's a good Spanish dish. But let's go through a little bit of Valverde and why he's even a controversial figure in my mind, and then kind of go back to why he thinks he is not. So June of 2010, he got a 2-year ban. It was backdated to the start of that year, and it ran to the end of 2011. And what was it for? It was for his implication in Operation Puerto. What was Operation Puerto? Well, that was where the doctor Efemiano Fuentes in 2006, he had his offices raided and a bunch of these blood bags seized. Many cycling names were linked to the notorious doctor, including, there was also, I want to say soccer and some other sports as well. But you had Tyler Hamilton had talked about him going there, and I think there was a blood bag mix-up, which caused him to get sick in the Vuelta, and that's kind of what brought this whole thing to pass as well. So Valverde was one of those guys, and what you had was the UCI opened up an inquiry. Valverde, he was cleared by the Spanish Association and a Spanish judge. Yes, that's true. However, in 2008, the Tour de France then crossed into Italy. And when they crossed into Italy, they took a blood sample. And that blood sample was then matched to the DNA blood bags from the good Spanish doctor. Now, Italy then moved to ban him. And in 2009, let's go back. So they're going to try to move. And the UCI, when they opened up this inquiry after he had been cleared by the Spanish judge then says, or does an order to have all the blood bags destroyed. Okay, that's crazy, but that's what happened. UCI had to go in and do like an emergency injunction to actually stop that from happening so that they could later on test those. So then they have those under their keep. Now the Tour de France, like I said, Valverde in 2008 gets a blood sample taken when he's in Italy because there's some fear there. And we mentioned that before about how this whole association came about for the Riders Union because Italy was taking these strong stances and the riders were actually refusing to get blood tested and doping tests. Anyway, they go into Italy and Italy takes a blood test. They match it up with these things, and then they basically want to move action on him, Italy themselves. And I believe doping is a criminal offense there, so they would be able to lock you up. With that, 2009 comes around. The Tour de France is going to once again venture into Italy. Valverde decides to not even do the tour for fear of being captured by the Italians. So this guy is so clean and honorable, he won't do the Tour de France, which is a big race, because he is worried he's going to be extradited or captured when he goes over there. Okay, so he doesn't do it. He doesn't do that race. Then the UCI did move to ban him. Like I said, they had emergency stay on all these blood bags, and they found him guilty through the matching of the DNA to the blood bags of Dr. Fuentes. So that's a little different than getting a positive test. And that's where you have a problem with Lance Armstrong always had said, look, I've passed all these tests. Well, I think we look back and we see what in Swiss 2000, I blank on the year, 2002 maybe, where he had a positive test that's come out, and then there was a donation to the UCI, so maybe he didn't pass all those tests. But I don't know that Valverde was ever tested positive other than these blood bags being matched to the Dr. Fuentes. Either way, here's some of his comments. I'll just leave you with these few comments that he made just recently. I think it was Wednesday, doing the Milano-Torino. And he said, Operation Puerto is something I shouldn't be asked about, he said bluntly. That's water under the bridge, and I don't even want to talk about it. I believe I've sufficiently demonstrated who I am since then. Who asks me about Operation Puerto is clueless. Asked about the rainbow jersey and how that makes him an important figure and symbol in the sport, he said, that's for sure. Being world champion is important for whoever it might be. Okay, and we'll leave it at this. Basically, him to come out, he never did take ownership at the time. And I think that's part of the problem. He never took ownership of it at the time. He fought it continuously. They had to backdate it even as it was. The Spanish had cleared him. It's fully a cultural thing where that doesn't seem to be a problem. And look, the hypocrisy is maybe there's a few things that are a problem. One is the hypocrisy, because when Froome is, and I'm not defending Froome, I'm just pulling out the differences you have here. But when Froome is going through this testing of his pharmacokinetic issue with salbutamol, the Spanish are not treating him very lightly. He should not be racing he should not be doing these races. We don't even know if we want him in the Vuelta. Meanwhile, there's their guy who they've cleared, and they are willing to accept with never any acknowledgement, and thinking that he's just without blame. So anyway, it's an interesting situation, and I think it goes to the point of look, he did serve his time. It's perfectly fine. He's back into it, but to actually say that he shouldn't even be asked, or that it's clueless to do so when he never actually acknowledged this whole situation is a bit much to take. Okay. Lastly, on our issues for today is Quickstep. They've been able to hook up a new financial sponsor. It's a Belgian window profile manufacturing, and I'm going to mess up this name, but Disa Nunik. They'll be joining the team sponsorship from the next season. The team will now be the DCU Quickstep. Is this going to save Gaviria and Enric Mas? I mean, the rumors were that Gaviria was going to, I want to say UAE. Enric Mas, who did great in the Vuelta. I think he was he third? Was he on the podium? Second or third? That he was going to be going away as well. They were going to dump these contracts basically because they weren't able to afford it. Now they get this influx, this new sponsor, which I'm thrilled that they're able to do so to keep a team around. But it will be interesting to see if it's enough to save those guys. Anyway, so that's thanks for joining in today. Once again, episode 89 of Between Two Wheels podcast. Check us out on our YouTube page, also on iTunes. Give us, it's real easy. You're there, you're listening to our show right now. Just go into the ratings, click one of those stars, and if you give us a 5-star, even a little note right in, that does help our projections and help us get the show up. It does give us projections to get the show out there more. So we thank you for tuning in, and have a good day.